Okay, I'll start again. So, welcome to this afternoon's introduction to Freedom at the End of Life. My name is Gail Palmer, for those who really don't know me. I have been the local osteopath for 25 odd years. I used to work here in Birdham, and then I built my own clinic over in Sidlesham. Some of you know me from Chichester, where I had a clinic there as well. Some of you don't know me yet. So, I first of all would really like to thank you for coming. It is a big deal to me that you turned up, and I really want to make sure that you get value out of this afternoon. Okay, so I really appreciate you being here, and I really appreciate you being here to look at some subjects which are quite hard for most people. Sometimes only bits of them, sometimes the whole lot. So I just want to introduce two people. So we've got Bex at the back of the room, who's taken your tickets or had you fill in your tickets, because there'll be a raffle later. Bex I have known for many years, and so it's great that she's being my room captain. And then there's also Matt Sedgley, who is my independent financial advisor, and I really wanted him to come down because I think it's relevant for all of those professionals who are looking after people as they're looking at insurances and mortgages and equity releases and finances and legal stuff. Does that make sense? So thank you very much for being here as well, Matt. He's the really tall one if you're not sure. So today's a really auspicious day. I don't know if any of you are into astrology and stuff, but it's a lunar eclipse tonight and full moon. So it's a really auspicious start for a new perspective on life and a new perspective on what's possible for you in your lives. So how are you all? Very well. Excellent. You see, that's what I really like. You're all beaming. You're clearly pink. I really enjoy that part. I can look a little worried when my patients don't look pink. So I've got a small exercise to start off with for you. Some of you have already started looking at it, some of you haven't, and I'm going to go through it slowly because I want you to really think of these questions. These are questions, hang on everyone, these are questions that crop up from time to time, and we often don't have an opportunity or the free will, if you like, to look at them, answer them for ourselves, and throughout our lives they crop up. But we're not necessarily in a space where they might be relevant, or we even think that they've got anything to do with us. So I'm just going to go through them. This is not an exhaustive list, but I hope it will help give you a little bit of clarity of where you are right now. Okay, there's no right or wrong answer, it's just what's so. So, first of all, this is just for you to think. I'm not going to ask for answers, it's fine. If you have a living will, that's a good job. And if you don't know what a living will is, I'll be discussing that later. Okay? And it's fine if you don't know what it is. It's not the same as a will. Have you expressed your wishes to your family or a friend or your doctor about what you want to have happen as you get closer and closer to dying? That might be what you want to have for your funeral. It might be what you do or don't want to have if you fall ill. Have you nominated someone to look after your funeral arrangements, or are they only going to find out when someone like a solicitor finds your will and reads it to them? Bit of a tricky one, that, if they don't know. Are you considering having a green burial, or are you just not clear what that involves at all? But it could be a good idea, but you've no idea. So that's about green burials. Do you know how your funeral will be paid for? And what happens when you die to the money in the bank and your savings? Because if you don't, it has really, really big implications for your family and your executors in particular. Have you set up your family and friends to create a unique, good funeral? Or do you want a strictly orthodox one? That's not to say that orthodox funerals are bad funerals, but we've all been to funerals where you come out and go, that really touched, moved and inspired me. And you've gone to other funerals where you felt sad for the person who's died, but you go, okay, won't be doing my one in that place. Yeah? So there's loads of things that in that conversation that really makes a difference. Do you have a list with your contact details of those people who you want the family to get in contact with after you die? So that might not just be your immediate family or your friends. It might be some people who they might never have heard you talk about, or who you haven't seen for 20 years, but you'd really like them to know what's happened. Do you know how to set your family free from despondency and upset and grief when you're no longer about? It frees them to create a life without you, and they're never going to forget the good times that you shared either. It's quite an extraordinary gift to be able to give that to your family. Do you want to save money on your funeral expenses? I will show you how. And it will save you more than you've invested in the whole of the programme if you choose to do that easily. Do you know how to save time and money on sorting out the legal aspects of dying and provisions for eventualities? The Freedom at the End of Life programme provides you with all the necessary forms to do that, and you just complete them. There are very few places you can get to do that unless you go to a solicitor. It's not free if you go to a solicitor. Have you considered how much time you spend thinking about life, death, what you want, what you don't want, regrets that you may or may not have, and how much it costs you in terms of the energy and the worry, and for a lot of people, just plain peaceful sleep. You know, when you go to bed, you go all the way through the night, and you might get up for a quick wee, and then you just go back to bed, as opposed to have things churning over in your mind. It's exhausting, because you get up in the morning and you feel as though you've done several rounds with a large wrestler. And it's only your brain going round and round and round and round. It's a very talkative conversation, our brains. Have you noticed that? It's just, the parrot just does not stop. But there are ways that you can have it so it does stop. So what would it be like if the worry around dying and death is taken away from you? How valuable would that be? How much energy would you end up having for other things? To spend time doing the things that you really want to do, that are really important to you and your family and your life, as opposed to surviving and getting by and I'll just make it till tomorrow. So one of the things about freedom at the end of life is having that sense of order and completion and clarity for yourself and what you want. Now, everyone has concerns about dying. It's part of being human. There's nothing wrong. And everyone's concerns are slightly different, because you've all come from different circumstances, you've been brought up differently, you have different ways of dealing with life. But what I'd like to do is invite you, so you can have a think about this later. This is yours to take away. I'm not going to mark it or anything like that. You'll be pleased to know. I just want to ask you what some of the concerns that you have for yourself as time goes on. So anyone want to say some of the concerns they might have?
Surviving.
Surviving? That's a pretty big concern. So staying alive?
Exactly.
Okay. I get that. Anything else?
Yes, with my husband or I go first, actually.
Okay, so who goes first?
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather he did it. I went.
That's very, yes, I get
Yes,
that.
he's much more capable, you see, of all this stuff, so he'd be fine. I'll just be a mess.
Okay. You know, it's a really big concern, that, because you never know, do you? There's no certainty in it. Even if you've planned everything that is obvious, you're going to be going first because you're more ill and you're older and what have you. It doesn't work like that. It really doesn't work like that. Okay, anything else? Yes? Quality of life. Really, really important. Sometimes more than the staying alive and the quantity of life. For a lot of people, and I think increasingly so, because everyone's living that much longer, the quality of life that you have is it's what makes you human, isn't it? Does that make sense? Okay, very good. Anything else?
Power of attorney.
Power of attorney, yeah? I'm going to put POA, because it takes a minute.
How do you get a family that think you're immortal to pay attention to this?
That is such a valid point, to be honest. So
I don't know how to shorten it. I'm sorry.
okay.
The problems of immortality.
How immortality may not be true.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
It'll do for now. Thank
Okay. It's really interesting because, you know, most people don't ask these questions. And they're quite confronting questions, like, oh, I've never thought of that before. Anything else? Any other concerns that you have as you get older?
Ending up as a vegetable.
Okay, yeah. How would you like
Which is quality.
How would you like me to describe that? Losing your marbles?
No, it's more being confined to bed
Okay.
and
So
completely
almost
dependent.
being invalided in some way.
It's an extension of quality. Dementia.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Lots of independence.
Thank you. See, it's got a thesaurus you need, really, don't you? Okay. Yeah. Can you read that? Yes. No.
So
More glasses.
I need a pair of copy of it.
Binoculars. Anything else?
I mean, again, I'm a member of the Dignity and Dying organisation, so those two are very important.
Yeah, they are. Absolutely. Anything else? I'm going to give you a few.
It's dealing with the unexpected, totally
Yeah.
unexpected.
Yeah. Thank you. How about fear of dying?
It's going to happen anyway, isn't it?
Well,
Won't be scared.
it is, but the manner in which you die is a big concern for many, probably most people.
Yeah,
I know
whether it's
you won't
peaceful
mind
or
about
whether
it,
it's
Les.
painful or
You'll just,
whether it's peaceful or whether it's painful or
yeah. So the manner of it, really.
I don't think some people have a fear if they know it's going to happen. They have a great fear of it when it comes to the point.
Yes. So the reality versus the theory is a very different experience because it's experiential at that point, isn't it? Okay. So, what did I just say? Reality versus what? Theory. That was the one.
It's a fact.
So we're all fallible, it's fine. What about concern about your family? Is that a real concern for people?
That was my thing about the immortality, you know, how to
Yeah.
share without going gloomy about it, that this is a reality.
Yeah.
Dependent younger relatives, possibly,
Mm-hmm.
Or grandchildren.
or children.
Yes.
Or even the old ones.
Yeah.
Because just because you may be the age that you are, your children may go before you. about total dependency, what about increasing disability or pain? Because for many people that's a reality.
It's a tricky
You
one.
know, bless you, most of you are probably not up for doing a marathon. I count myself in that one as well, to be honest. Stand running. But, you know, what you want to do in your mind that doesn't get older compared to what your body feels like it's up for doing is a world apart. Because your mind don't age. Yes,
Also, you
Ray.
can get sucked into medication if pain sort of creeps up on you.
Yeah.
And without realising it, if you like, you become dependent on things that you don't really want to be dependent on.
Yeah.
So then when you how to make a decision to say, okay, enough already. I don't want to do
So
it
could you
anymore.
put that as not having the autonomy that you would want?
I think so, yeah, because you're being controlled, aren't
Yeah.
you, by
Yeah.
something else, to a degree.
Yeah. Nearly at the bottom of the page.
I can broaden it because part of dealing with increasing disability will be when to downsize
Yes.
and where you're going to go and those
Yes.
and that's the last.
So how could you put that? How to manage your life going forward,
Well,
or your living circumstances?
Yeah.
Practical arrangements.
Yeah, practical arrangements.
Yeah.
It is.
Being realistic and doing it sooner.
well, this is
Yeah.
your living,
Why you
living
still
accommodation.
count difficult.
That's a big.
Yes, not usually too hard.
Okay. I think the only other thing that I can see that springs out to me, which is a slightly different level to what we've got here, is having no regrets. So you come into the world as a little pink thing, and there's not much going on, well, apart from what your tummy's telling you, frankly. But we go with a whole load of stuff that we filled up over our lifetimes, don't we? And for many people, being able to let go in the final moments is about not being scared of dying. So it's that one, but it's also not leaving stuff unsaid or undone. So you're whole and complete. Does that make sense? And that might come on many levels, on relationship levels, on financial levels, on what have you.
And that applies to the family. If somebody is killed in a road accident
Yes.
suddenly,
Yeah,
and you had a
I
row
didn't-
before they went
yeah.
to the
Well, I
dog.
didn't say I love them, and I've done that for the last 25 years, and I didn't say I love them before they went to work. Yeah, it is. And you know, the interesting thing about time, that's almost the only time that you've run out. It's too late. Just like that. So thank you for, that's an impressive, slightly worrying list. But it's a very realistic list and a very realistic aspect of people's lives and what concerns them and what they're interested in managing and dealing with ongoingly for everybody, wherever you are as a grandparent or a parent or a child or a friend of or what have you. And there's a lot in there, isn't there? There's a whole life of conversations in there. And it's hardly surprising when you start looking at all of that it's hard to know where to start. I mean, you know, it's not a one moment conversation. You know, would you like a cup of tea or coffee? Yes or no? Easy peasy. So the benefits of getting things organised, certainly for a lot of those, are pretty obvious. But when I started looking at this, I was looking at it through a filter of my mum getting older. My mum, for the last couple of years, has had kidney failure, kidney disease, and the last 10 years, she has been cleaning out her house. My grandfather built the house in 1923, and so it's had 3 generations in the house. It is 1923 standard. We have Art Deco mirrors. Nothing has changed. The wallpaper is the same. Some of it's been painted, some of it hasn't. There are some of the original curtains. Okay? There are some of the original beds. There is all the original furniture, which was handmade specifically for the house. Some of it's actually built into the house. So, bless her, given that she's a hoarder, and I'm a bit of a hoarder, as you can tell if you've been, because I have several sheds. She's been trying to go through stuff for the last 10 years, and she's done pretty well, I have to say. I didn't go and see her all that often, but there was less in the house each time I went. And she was really focused on trying to do that, but particularly the last 2 years or so, she's become increasingly unable to do that. Partly because she had so much fluid in her abdomen, she weighed massive amounts more than she should have done, she was very breathless, which is one of the signs and symptoms. She was very tired, so 2 or 3 naps during the day was quite normal. And it also gave her degrees of confusion and what have you as well. So in amongst that background, I started looking at how I could help her. Because it was upsetting to me and my brothers to see that she was struggling so much. You know, she was struggling about little things and the big things. It wasn't just one aspect, it was kind of the whole lot. She was just really overwhelmed and exhausted and didn't know what to do. And I started looking at it, and obviously I have all of my gorgeous patients to thank as well for this, because I have plenty of reminders coming in every day, that actually there is no successful structure to getting older. Now what I mean by that is, you know, when you're a child, you get up, you get dressed, or you got dressed, you know, you go to school, you come back, you have your tea, you have your bath, you do a bit of playing, you go to bed, okay? It's really simple structure. Similar thing when you're working, when you're retired, and you want to sort your life out and downsize, or you want to tidy stuff up, there's no one to help. There's no structure to help you do it. And by now you've got 50, 60, 70 years of stuff. Emotional stuff, physical stuff, mental stuff, family stuff. You know, it's just like, there's a lot of stuff. And it's, I mean, some of it's great, and some of it's not so great. Some of it clearly serves you, and some of it is of absolutely no use to you whatsoever, and some just frankly takes up a lot of space in your brain and has you awake all night. Does that kind of resonate with you? Kind of, you know, I'm in the same boat. I'm just a few years younger than some of you. It makes no difference what age you are. This is not a conversation about what age you start off at. This is a conversation for life. Does that make sense? So I started looking at, you know, how am I going to help Mum? I mean, I haven't physically got enough time to go and help her sort out the loft and what have you. And I started realising that if I could find a structure and break it down into little parts, it would make life a lot easier. Because you start looking at, you know, how am I going to sort out the house? And it's just like, oh my God, I don't know. And, you know, one drawer at a time is great advice, but it doesn't get you very far. You just end up with flux from cleaning. It gets a lot messier before it gets a lot better. So I started writing workbooks and worksheets and checklists so that there was an order and a logical sequence to going through things. And it really made a huge difference. We suddenly found she was doing this quite secretly, actually. We only discovered when I only really discovered when she died, which was back in February, just how much she got done behind the scenes. Even my brother, who lived up there a lot of the time, didn't know. And particularly the last few months of last year, you know, I was really clear that her kidney disease was getting really difficult for her. She was getting recurrent chest infections because of all the fluid everywhere. And so time became even more of a conversation piece. You know, there wasn't, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow. There wasn't a tomorrow. It's like, now is when you can do it. You know, you can't do it yesterday. That's all happened, gone. Forget it. You know, all you've got is now, because tomorrow hasn't happened, and there's no guarantee that tomorrow will happen for any of us. So that's where I started from. How can I make a structure that would help and serve my mum and the family to make a difference, to help her have a successful later life? So planning your life and your future is a two-edged sword, isn't it? You can do all the planning that you like and you still might meet the bus or the flu or whatever. And there's planning as much as you can and you might live 20 years longer than you were expecting. And there's planning and you're lucky enough to get it right. But without any planning, you end up putting up with stuff ongoingly. You have the same conversations with your head and the parrot that you've had all the rest of your life. Physically, pretty much nothing changes unless your family come in and wholesale sweep through, and you're going to get upset if they do that, unless they're unbelievably tactful. Okay? So that's where I started my quest from. Any questions so far?
How long was your mother widowed for?
My father died 20 years ago. So my mum was 30 years younger than my father, so he would be 104. Yeah, so I have a slightly weird family. He had me at 59, I've got two younger brothers. So I'm used to generations. I'm used to managing very different conversations at the ends of life. Which is why, to a certain extent, I'm probably more qualified than many of you to talk about this, because I've been right in the middle of it for some time. He was 23 when he died. I was 23 when he died. You know what I mean. You got it. You got it. And I really wish that some of the things that I know now, I had known when my father was ill. He had Alzheimer's. He has Alzheimer's for almost 4 years before he died. And it happened really quite quickly. And his 80th birthday was fine. He was getting a bit forgetful, but we didn't think anything more of it. And he still knew us by the end, but he was stubborn, so he could have forgotten things. He could have just not be bothered to, because why would he need to? And it could be all sorts of combinations of, getting older because he just didn't remember, or didn't hear. And those are the realities of life, aren't they? And we all have to deal with them, or the families have to deal with those. You don't have to have one thing wrong. Sometimes they just come in roughs. And sometimes it's all peaceful and quiet and it's great. And you think, yeah, today's a great day. It's not raining. It's fantastic. We haven't had any floods. So one of the things that I discovered going through all of this and asking my mum some of the questions I've been asking you and what she wanted to have done and what she wanted to do, I would get, oh yes, darling, I've been thinking about that all last spring. Oh yes, darling, I've been thinking about that. I'm like, that's so fabulous, Mum. I'm so pleased. Do you want to finish the other end of that sentence for me? Because I don't know what you've been thinking. I don't know what decisions you may or may not have made, or if I need to prompt you to help me give you an answer. Nothing's written down, it's just in here. Well, that's no good to me. And that's why I started writing everything down. That's where the checklist was so important. Because if she thought of something, she could write it down. Even if she didn't know about it was relevant for anything else or what have you, it gives you clues, doesn't it? It just gives you clues. Well, that was the theory. Every part of the course, and freedom at the end of life is one part of a bigger course. Every part that I had done, I used before my mum died. Every single part. And I am so grateful that I took the time and did the work and had the conversations and had the upset and what have you, because it made such an enormous difference. It made a difference to me, it made a difference to my mum, and it made a difference to the family. And it made a difference, and it's still making a difference. And it takes something to do that. You have to be willing to have those conversations. You have to be willing to get on with it. Put the big girl's panties on. and there's nothing wrong with being upset. You know, it's part of being human. It's the same part of being human as being happy and joyful. It's the other end of the scale. You don't get one, you don't get that freedom, and you don't get that peace of mind without perhaps clearing out some of the past and digging some of the stuff that you don't need out. And some of that letting go is upsetting. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the course that I've created now. And you're going to listen to this in probably a couple of ways. So you're either going to listen to it from, wow, I've done that. And some of it might be on your list because you've got a tick, okay? And some of you are going to listen from it as like, I don't need to do this now. I'm too young to do this now. It's like, please, you're not. You're never, ever too young to look at these things. Ever. And some of you might just look at it from, yeah, I know all that. I know all that. I invite you to look at it as though you've never heard this or thought this for yourself before, because you'll see some stuff in it that you might not have thought of. When I started putting this together, boy oh boy was my learning curve big. So the course, Freedom at the End of Life, is broken up into 4 separate topics. It is the biggest of the modules I've created so far. And they were huge topics. How can I possibly manage to put them all together? Never mind. So the 4 topics are future planning and dying, death, funeral arrangements and ceremonies around that, and bereavement and grief. Told you they're big subjects. And this is not here to make you get upset. It's to have you look at what's possible. What could you do differently? What could you learn from? In the same way that, you know, you've been to good funerals and you've been to not such enjoyable funerals. So each of the topics has a workbook where things are explained in a bit more detail. And they each have at least 1, 2 or more worksheets where you go through structure to help you get to some of the answers that you need in order to take some more action. Does that make sense? And then there's some simple checklists, so you can see where you've got to. So, down that way. Because I don't know about you, I quite like lists, and I really like ticking the darn things off. Or scribbling them out. So there's a workbook for getting older and end of life. There's a sheet for your next of kin. There's a conversation about creating bucket lists and wishes and desires. There's some more information about gaining informed consent, which is really important if you are thinking about doing a living will. So that's where the living will bit comes in. There's a whole conversation about understanding what your values and your beliefs are. Most people haven't got a clue. Their life runs completely unaware that in the background are your belief structures and your values. And if something interferes with that, you kick butt and you've no idea what's running the show. So we do an exercise where that gets made really clear for you. Once you know what your values are in life, it's really obvious what you want to choose. So let me give you a really simple example. If you have a value that you like to spend a lot of time with or around your family, and you decide to move away because you've seen a fantastic house out in Spain and you want to sunbathe in the sunshine, for you that would be a really bad idea. Does that make sense? Because you'll be going away from your primary value of being and seeing the family as much as you can. So that doesn't mean to say you wouldn't do it, but then you suddenly discover it's like, that doesn't work for me, really, you know, and then you move back, and it's cost thousands of pounds to do that, and lots of upset. There's a whole workbook separately on advanced life directives, which is what the Brits call a living will. Everyone else calls it, well, colloquially it's a living will. And then there's a living will document for you to be able to fill in for yourself. There's also some conversations around powers of attorney, which isn't really, well, part of it's covered in this course, a lot more of it's covered in another module. So that's the first part. There's quite a lot in there, isn't there? I know, I was shocked when I started writing it. Then there's a conversation around death and dying itself, things that you might need to consider, checklist of things that you need to do, or what someone else needs to do when someone dies. You know, a lot of my friends say, well, you know, if my mum dies tomorrow, I have no idea what to do apart from I think a doctor has to come. And they genuinely, no kidding, not a clue. When someone dies suddenly, and perhaps, you know, at a much younger age than you're expecting, you know, you get hit by a juggernaut. I mean, you can't think. Nothing happens, there's no one in. And yet there's a whole load of stuff that needs to happen. I don't know how many of you have had to organise someone else's funeral. Okay, I'll do it the other way around. Who hasn't? 4, 5?
Do you mean as the primary person organising it?
Yeah. Or one who is able to make significant decisions as opposed to, I'll make a Victoria sponge fortune. Yeah, you know, it's everyone jokes, it's like, well, it just seems to happen magically, doesn't it? It just happens. No, it really doesn't. And there's masses of stuff that you can do that makes it so much easier. So there's a whole checklist for that, makes it easy. And you can do it pretty much all in advance. When I started this particular project, I had, one of my outcomes was I wanted to have my mum's memorial service completed apart from date and time. I mean, completed, like the order of service. She didn't quite manage it. I was about 10 days off. And I have to say, it was done remarkably quickly. So, the next day. But that, you know, and I would only been able to do that because I already had done all the homework and got everything together before then. Trying to do it from scratch, that's why you have good funerals, but not so good funerals. So there's a whole load of checklists around that make an enormous difference to you, perhaps as the person who may have died, because you know that your family concerns are dealt with and sorted, and they don't have to deal with the unexpected. And for the person trying to organise it, it kind of goes the same way. Funeral arrangements. Oh, one thing to say about dying, it's always a surprise. It is always a surprise. It makes no difference if you've been willing them to die because they're so poorly, or it genuinely is a sudden event. You know, even if you've been willing them to go, and I've had this experience, my father's first wife, I had the privilege of being with when she died, and I actually had to ask her 10 times if she would like to leave and go and join my father. Eventually, she got it, which was the most extraordinary experience. but you still think, why did she do it today? Why didn't she do it tomorrow? Isn't that weird? Isn't that human? Just like, really? Strange. It's really weird how human brains work. How they don't look at stuff and do look at stuff and change it around. Then there's a whole section on funerals and ceremonies, because there's a lot of organising to do. You know, if you're organising a big birthday party, you spend months organising it, don't you? Who's going to be on the list, what you're going to have to eat, what's going to be on the table. You have a funeral, 2 weeks. Got to organise it. 1 week. Thankfully, don't have to get someone done in a day, and they do in the Middle East. I mean, I don't know how they manage that. I don't know. I just don't know how they've even been able to do that, but they do. You have to be dead and buried within 24 hours. Actually, before sunrise. The next day. How do they get everyone there? You know, all those Saudi princes suddenly fly off like. They managed to get that. I mean, it's just extraordinary. But it's well, yeah, but they don't all have jets. Surely. But you know, that takes a different mentality. We really don't have that mentality as kind of Brits, really, do we? But you know, it's just another example of how it happens. Checklist of things to consider you get, resources to help manage a funeral and the ceremonies, order of service guidelines, summaries, people to contact that you don't normally think about. I mean, my mum, bless her, had masses of address books, like 6 or 7. None of them dated, so you couldn't tell when she'd started them. Great. Well, at least we had them. That was a good start. And then the last module is about bereavement and grief and managing your own, when you're thinking of your own mortality, managing others' expectations and how they manage it for themselves. And particularly around helping to manage dependence as well. So particularly younger children and what have you, that's a really different conversation to have. So many children in this country are almost not told what's happening at all, which is bizarre, isn't it? Because frankly, they're much more akin to it. You know, they've been standing on dead ants and then discovered they don't actually move again for a little while by then. And adults, we all seem to forget that ability to, oh, yeah, it's a line. Okay, so that's a little brief summary about what the course is about and what's entailed in it. It's a lot. And the aims are really quite simple. They stop the uncertainty and the confusion that you tend to go to when there's a lot of stuff to deal with and you don't know where to start and you get overwhelmed. It gives you huge peace of mind. It doesn't whir around in your head. It's written down, it's done, it's dusted, it's finished, it's complete. You stop wasting energy, faffing around. I'll do it tomorrow. So tomorrow hasn't happened. Do it. Just won't do it. I'll just sit and watch daytime TV and go to sleep. It gets everything organised. Your family doesn't have to worry about it. Whoever's organising your estate doesn't have to think about it. They know where all the documents are. They know what needs to happen. There are no secrets. There's no unexpressed wishes that you really want to have known, okay? And there's no time like the present. There is, if you like, no better time to start than right now. Simple. It's really simple. And you're going to get back far more from the course in all sorts of ways than the relatively tiny amount that will get invested in the course. It'll probably save you thousands. So I'm going to ask Bex to hand out a form now, and I'm going to go through it. So you'll all get one of these, which is a payment form. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about it. So the course itself, all 4 modules, is £197. Okay, £100 saving already. Perfect. And you can have it either in a downloadable copy form that you print off on your computer, or I can print it into a binder, and that's a little bit more expensive to pay with those costs. It is serious value for money. If you think you got one of those areas sorted, done, out of your head, would that be worth 50 quid to you? Would that be worth 50 quid to your family in the amount of time it's going to take them to try and sort through your papers, which could be all over the house, in order to bring one part of that together? Is that worth it just in the travel time that they've got to do to get from A to B dozens of times? I think so. Does that give you peace of mind? Yes, and at least you then know, a bit like your list that you've already got, what you still need to do. And there'll be aspects of that that you will think you would have got it handled and it's done and dusted, and you'll suddenly discover that there's another nuance, another layer of the onion you hadn't thought about at all. And you can get that done and dusted, and it really is whole and complete. There's nothing more to do. So what you get to do with your life, instead of having all this stuff in the past, holding you up, dragging you down, whirring around, is instead of all of that stuff being right out here in your future, cluttering you up, robbing you of the energy, and your freedom to be whoever and do whatever you want gets stuck right back into the past. So what it leaves out here in the future is whatever you want for your life. Whatever you want for your death. Whatever your family might want to help you with as well. That is priceless. That truly is priceless. So, I've got a couple of extra bonuses, just in case that hasn't tickled your fancy already. So if you want to secure your copy today, okay, and you do the payment arrangements here today, you will get a 45 minutes free consultation with me, which needs to be taken by the 23rd of September. Okay? If you want to think about it, you won't get 45 minutes consultation with me. If you decide in the next week, and I forgot to put that, I'm so sorry.
What sort of consultation?
Phone consultation.
Sorry?
Phone consultation.
Oh, right, okay. To do with this?
To do with an area of life that you're really concerned about. It might be to do with what we've already spoken about. It's up to you. I don't know.
This is a one-to-one consultation.
It's a one-to-one consultation. Yeah, I can't do 2-to-1.
Well, you might need to.
No! No, Les.
Oh, damn.
So if you need to have a bit more time to think about it, you've got until next Friday, and you will get a half-hour free consultation with me on the phone. Okay? And for those of you who are one of partners, I'm willing to do a 50% off. So buy one and get half price the next one. And that's a really good deal. Okay? So, Bex, if you would hand those out, please, that would be really fantastic. So I next really want to, and I'm going to be brief now, honest, is about creating a future. So I know almost all of you, and I know what big lives you've had, what you've done, what you succeeded at, what you struggled with, what you're proud of, what you created, what there still is to create. Because I have the privilege of looking after many of you and having those conversations with you. And it is really a privilege. So once everything's settled, what then? What are you going to put into your future? What are you going to create for yourself that you don't already have now? You know, it's not necessarily something that you can even imagine right now, because there's a whole load of stuff still to do. There's a whole load of stuff to put into your past. Yeah? But once you have an opening, a freedom, and that peace of mind, your mind can start creating new things. Things that really touch, move, and inspire you. It might be on a, you know, you decide to go out and have green tea once a week. Or you might go, that's it. I've had enough sitting at home, I'm going on a world tour. I'm off. I'm going to sit on a cruise ship for a bit. Or it might be you really want to go back to your family home that you haven't seen since you were yay high. And see what's happened to it. It might, for you, that journey might be a sense of completion for you.